Reading from 10 Years of Pain, chapter 9, starting with this image here. And if you notice this here on my chest, the story behind this will be told when I reach the chapter called Accidents and Errors. But the next chapter that I'm going to read, after showing you this image, is called Body Suspension. Body suspension is an ancient ritual traditionally performed among both Indian Hindus, the Tamil Nadu, and North American Mandan tribes. It has also been practiced by the Sufis of the Middle East. Whilst body suspension are still performed in these cultures, artists such as Stelarc and Fakir Muzaffar have adopted the practice. Later, it has spread to the body modification community, where body suspensions are becoming ever more popular. Thanks to people like Alan Faulkner of Traumatical Stress Discipline, TSD, the knowledge of how to prepare and execute a safe suspension is now widespread. Bear in mind, this is early 2000s. Today it's a whole different story, and once I'm done with this book, I'm going to start reading Learning to Fly, which is the story of the evolution of Wings of Desire. I'll get back to that. In modern body suspension, the spiritual motivation, which traditionally is the essence, is not so common. Or maybe it is. Most of those who practice body suspension today do it for the challenge or for the kick. For some, it is more like a hobby or some form of extreme sport. When I first saw a picture of a body suspended from big hooks through the flesh, I knew instantly that this was something I wanted to do myself. Others, looking at the same picture, would think it seemed extremely painful, but I thought it looked wonderful. I could imagine hanging like that would not be just a challenge, but also a great experience. It seemed so peaceful. I imagined that a body suspension could be the gateway to a higher consciousness, a spiritual experience. This was, and still is, one of the goals I wanted to achieve. I knew I would suspend eventually, and my research began. I read whatever I could find on the subject, which was not much. Years later, I found TSD, a suspension group from Texas, on the internet. I emailed my questions to Alan, and he replied. Each time I would ask a number of questions, and as he answered, I learned what I needed to try my first suspension. And here's a picture of Paolucci suspended in a Superman position, which was probably one of the first few suspensions that I facilitated for other people. Once I had learned the basics, I was ready to go through with my first flight. Unfortunately, it had to be postponed due to a back injury that resulted in surgery. Not until about a year after my operation did I feel fit to do my first suspension. It was a 4-point suicide. Visually and practically the suspension was successful. It was performed live. But I did not enjoy it. The strain on my lower back caused extreme pain to my troubled spine. The pain made me tense, and it was impossible to relax into the suspension and find comfort in this new sensation. After this experience, it took me nearly 4 months before I attempted another suspension. This time I tried a Superman, and it was wonderful. It was truly a completely new and euphoric sensation of floating in the air. It is almost impossible to describe the sensation. It is not comparable with anything else. Naturally, each person will have his or her individual experience. Each suspension is different from the others. Many things, like the physical and emotional state of mind and body, will affect the experience. There are several different ways to suspend, and each of them affects the body differently. Some are more comfortable, others are more painful. Again, this is very individual from person to person and from time to time. Most practitioners of body suspension will have their favorites. I have enjoyed all my suspensions, except the first. And my favorites are the knee suspension and the suicide suspension. The reasons are that they are simple and easy to prepare, and they give a lot of freedom to move while suspended. I find it very amusing to swing, twist, and turn in the air. It's like a crazy roller coaster. And this is the image from my very first suspension at Entre, the paint studios. Not much clearing to the ceiling, as you can see, and Roberto there jacking up the chain hoist, standing on this stool, using chains instead of rig line. Many things that are not up to today's standards. I have not had any spiritual experiences from suspending, but I have had lots of fun and ecstatic sensations. It is better than any drug I have ever tried, and healthier. As a performing artist, I perform suspensions in some of my shows. Some shows are even based on a suspension. There is always a huge difference between private and public suspensions. In private, I can take my time and do not have to worry about anyone else. On stage, I'm concerned about the timing and choreography in order to make it a good show for the audience. What the suspension does to me is the same. It gives me that intense rush and a sensation of freedom. It just feels good. The main difference in private suspensions and the suspensions I perform in my shows is that I normally hang for longer periods in private. This is not true for the endurance suspension I performed in galleries as part of Quintet. As it is truly a great experience, I recommend body suspensions to anyone over 18 years old who feel the urge and are mentally prepared to undergo a personal challenge. Digression here, I don't anymore. I recommend suspension to anyone who feels the urge, period. If you don't feel the urge, don't do it. You don't have to. Like skydiving, some people has the urge to jump out of a plane. By all means, go for it. Personally, not particularly keen on that. And I don't have to do it just because others say you have to do it. You only have to do the things that you really and truly want to do from yourself. I cannot teach just anyone to jump in broken glass or to enjoy cutting themselves, but I can take anyone who is prepared for it through a body suspension. I cannot guarantee that everyone will enjoy it, but among the about 50 people I have suspended this far, only a few would not do it again. Most of the others are looking forward to the next opportunity. I have had a valuable experience. Now all have had a valuable experience, which they will remember for the rest of their lives. They have gained a new strength. And self-confidence. This is actually one of my favorite suspension pictures of myself from that time, hovering over a crowd from a crane, hanging from my knees. Digression. This was before we started applying safety harnesses for knee suspensions, because back then I had never seen someone tear out from a knee suspension. Later we did see that. More on that when we get to learning to fly. And here's a little teaser for the next book, Learning to Fly, because this chapter is called Wings of Desire. To give others the possibility to obtain the experience of a body suspension, Pain Solution, with the collaboration of others, organized the annual event Wings of Desire Oslo Body Suspension Festival. Here I must have a digression again, because we had only done it once by the time this book was written. It later became the Oslo SUSCON. The first time we did it was in 2002, and it's been a yearly event ever since. The festival is organized as a workshop, and our aim is to teach the participant all aspects involved: history, rigging, equipment, piercing technique, hygiene, safety, aftercare, cross-contamination, etc. We want to involve them in all the practical work, as well as give them a thorough theoretical lecture. There are numerous possibilities of how to suspend a body by hooks through the skin. Wings of Desire and other suspension gatherings are ideal events to explore these possibilities and try out new variations. In addition, they give the general public an opportunity to peek into our levitated world of body suspension. Although some of these gatherings are reserved for the participants. On the opposite page are just a few examples of some of the most common suspension styles. The pictures are taken at Wings of Desire 2002 and Wings of Desire 2003, and show the following suspensions: a 4-point suicide, 8-point Superman suspension, inverted knee suspension, crucifix suspension, 2-point chest suspension, and a lotus suspension. Again, the images just described. As this was written before this, like at the time that in the beginning, Wings of Desire was the name of the event that later became the suspension team as such. So separating the suspension work from Pain Solution, I wanted to create a separate branch or platform to focus on that kind of work, because while we do perform suspensions as Pain Solution in our shows, the work that we do with Wings of Desire is exclusively suspension related. Another little thing I need to explain to clarify that has changed since. In the beginning, I had this feeling that everybody that came to the event to get suspended should also be involved in piercing the other people, in helping out with aftercare, and be involved like I just read here. And this is not how we do it anymore. It's perfectly fine to come to get suspended, and there is a difference between the practitioners, the people who are getting involved and learning the skill sets that are needed to suspend another person. It's a whole lot more to it than we knew at the time. And I very quickly learned that not everybody is interested in doing the practical work to help suspend another person. They just want to get suspended and have the experience. And thank you very much. That's what I came for. So that's not how we operate anymore. And then I will read the next chapter called Spiritual Experiences. One of my personal goals, and what has been my primary motivation all along, is to achieve an altered state of mind through the physical strain. The purpose of the many rituals that have inspired me is to enter into a trance, to have an out-of-body experience, or to experience other forms of the higher levels of consciousness. In different cultures, these states of mind have had, and still have, various meanings and purposes. For some, it is an encounter with divinity. For others, a contact with one's greater self. But common for all is the spiritual aspect, the proof of a higher power and that something lies beyond our physical bodies. In some cultures, people enter into a trance before going through physically demanding tasks, which would seem otherwise impossible. Trance may also be achieved by mass suggestion, fasting, sweat lodge, or other preliminary stages of the ritual. I have not yet managed to reach this goal, but I have been right on the edge on some occasions. The first time was at the rave party where Pain Solution was performing. We were mostly doing fire stunts and I had padlocks stitched onto my torso. This was quite new to me at the time, and I was dancing wildly. It came to a point where I felt I was losing contact with the floor, as if I was dancing without touching the ground. What I felt was pure pleasure. I watched the crowd from above and was about to fly up and out from the stage. I do not know what really happened, but it was suddenly very quiet. A technical problem with the sound system had put an end to my almost leaving my body experience. The second time I reached that exact same point again was very similar. I was on stage, going totally crazy, padlocks stitched to my torso and blowing fire like a wild creature. Again, I could not feel that my feet were touching the floor. I had just a brief flash of seeing myself from outside, a glimpse from above of the dancing crowds. But I got scared this time and threw myself to the floor and stopped the performance. I still regret that I did not go with the flow. Both of these experiences were in the early periods of Pain Solution. I promised myself that the next time I ever come this close, I would let go. Unfortunately, I have never since been so close to leaving my body. What I have experienced is very close to entering into a trance. This has happened while performing the endurance performances of Quintet, and a couple of times while suspending. The drawback of going through these challenges as a public performance is that I am aware of the people present and pay attention to my stage appearance. Nevertheless, in some of these occasions, I have closed my eyes and tried to disconnect to the physical me. Why I have not succeeded is unclear. It might have to do with my threshold and my wish to stay in control over the situation. I know I should find the time to do more of my exercises in private and focus entirely on my own benefit rather than worry about the audience and the visuals of the performance. And that's almost 20 minutes right there, so I'll take a break, show you a couple of images that I've flicked past. And I will get back with the next chapter very soon.